Please welcome Fatou Mandiang Diatta, alias Sister Fa, singer and activist for child protection.
Thank you. They asked me outside if I can success to make you sing. I say, let's see. The German people are more serious, but I usually success to do so. Then we're gonna try together, okay? It's just a refrain, don't be scared. It's gonna be in Wolof. When I say, ayo, ayo, le, you say, ah, fai baji. Just like, not like in the church, but a little bit like live, you see? We're gonna try. Ayo, ayo, le. Ayo, ayo, le. Ah, fai baji. Ayo, ayo, le. Ah, fai baji. Beautiful. Daniela, did you hear this? Let's go. Merci. Go.
Si mununga sila beme, hey, hey, Joji pare munuri boral, fai baji. Si mununga sila beme, hey, hey, Joji pare munuri boral, fai baji. Ayo, ayo le, fai baji. Ayo, ayo le, fai baji. Ayo, ayo le, fai baji.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Mbajali bajufak, mbagenalil bulago bafege. Ali fubaj fololal, fara atemit, jambu toro wol, nuragumit, atiamumit, sambo asukaten, urambeno. Apurumbujam, Hamatul, Fumujam, Lisabari, and Inonete, Legasonte Noro, Mumi, Ale Habutu here, Abutu Nachi, Sonte Nalil, Alalubayalil, Buleholal, Ubayalil, Alalubayalil, Ayu, Ayuli, Feibaji, Ayu, Ayuli. L'enfant est un fruit du cœur, il est un des mérites du paradis. N'est point de nôtre celui qui s'en sert pour son gagne-pain, pour acheter des radis. Alayhi salatu wassalam disait, chacun d'entre vous est un berger, et chaque berger rendra compte au sujet de son troupeau. Il disait, n'éduquez point vos enfants de la même façon dont vous êtes éduqués, car ils appartiennent à une génération qui n'est pas la vôtre.
Big up.
Ayo, ayo, le, fai baji. Ayo, ayo, le, fai baji. Ayo, ayo, le, fai baji. Ayo, ayo, le, fai baji.
Again. Ayo, ayo, le. Ayo, ayo, le. Beautiful, as you can hear, it's a song to make a child sleep, to just reassure, to let him feel good, close to her mom, I can say with security. Thanks a lot for singing with me. Please, a round of applause for yourself. Merci. Thank you.
And now, joining Sister Fa on stage are Nick Okafor, founder, executive director, Trouble & Co., Trisha Wang, co-founder, Sudden Compass, and moderator Rashana Bide, organizational psychologist.
Wow, what an absolute treat for us to close out the day. Congratulations to all who pitched and won, and to follow this wonderful musical performance from Sister Fa. Thank you again, Sister Fa. This is such a great way for us to kick off our short conversation, but meaningful conversation about storytelling. And for generations, centuries, millennia, humans have been sharing stories in many ways in order to make change and to engage stakeholders. And now we can do it with technology and data, and all three of our panelists are going to be sharing how they bring stories to life through music and other ways. So let me start with you, Trisha. Tell us what is your story of what brought you as a storyteller?
Well, I noticed, I had the privilege of actually growing up in the rise of big data. I literally witnessed the rise of it. I know a lot of people have been born into as if AI and big data has always been everywhere, but I literally saw before my eyes the digitization of our humanity. So I witnessed life analog and then moving into digital, our digitalness. And what I realized in the process was that there was this assumption that people thought that the more data, the more quantitative data that we had about people, the better we would understand them. And I also had hopes for that too. But then I realized the opposite was happening when I was working in the public sector, when I was working inside nonprofits or working in communities, building tech centers, or whether I was working in private sector, I saw the same thing happening, whether it was in tech companies. So that more quantitative data that was being asked for, and the more quantitative data that people had, the more value we placed in the measurement of the data, and the more humanity it took away from people. So I witnessed the rise of big data and the decrease of our own personhood. And slowly over the last 10 years, the big question that's been driving my work, whether I'm in the public sector or private sector or writing more publicly about my analysis, is that somehow, for some reason, we move from being people to being users. And we normalize that. That became a standard way of talking, like, oh, what are we going to do for the user? And we use that language across all industries. And so I think what has really driven my life's work is really to understand what happens when we start to treat people as users, when we have pre-quantitative definitions that, when you treat people as users, you're treating them as something that is functional for the institution, right? But it means you're treating them less human, and it means you can serve them less well. And so whether I'm working with companies or nonprofits or startups, my goal is always to help people figure out how do you not only use the big data, because I'm not saying don't use quantitative, you need the numbers, but how do you make sure you do that in a way that also brings in what I call the thick data, which is just me rebranding qualitative data to make it as sexy and cool as big data. So I'm you need the big data and the thick data, and you need to bring it together, because at every point then you can make sure, is this decision moving me closer or away from humanity? And if your decision-making input is only quantitative, and that's where there's an issue. So I'm always coaching leaders and founders to be like, you have to have the qualitative. You have to learn how to always keep talking to people and listening to people.
Big data to thick data. Is that with two C's? Can I?
Yes, actually, yes.
Coined here now.
Yes. We're going to come back and hear about how you extract stories using data. Thank you so much, Trisha, for being with us. Sister Fa, I would like to ask you, what brought you here as a storyteller and clearly a beautiful musician?
Yes, I think is to share with you how I use music to promote human rights, to talk about child protection and very taboo subjects like female genital mutilation, early marriage, and I can just say base violence, base gender violence. Where I come from in Casamance, the region is between Gambia and Guinea-Conakry. There, female genital mutilation is quite a social norm. It's very normal. And I was asking myself, how can I share my stories with my communities without hurting them? How can I convince the women who perform FGM? How can I talk to the religious people? How can I engage the young generation to really take decision and know that female genital cutting is something negative? Then someone say music start where the language stop. I said to myself, okay, I'm quite very well placed to confirm this. And I use my music to promote human rights. I work in school, I work in the hospital. I try really through painting in Calabash, through slam, through music, hip hop music, to really talk about those issues that have really a very negative sense in our communities. Living 20 years in Germany and going back in Senegal and starting to talk about women's rights was not really something that the communities like. They was calling me the black white woman who come back just to disturb people. Then now she's emancipated, you see? Then for me, yes, music is quite very essential and very strong weapon to tackle issue like gender transformation, because through music I teach the young generation to respect the diversity, to respect each person, what is his choice for his own life. And yes, and it's really working a lot.
Sister Fa, thank you. And we'll talk more with you in a moment as well. But let's hear then from our third panelist, Nick.
Yeah, so I can't tell the story of me without talking about my parents. And so my dad was a public service engineer. My mom used to be a math teacher. So it's no surprise I found my purpose teaching folks how to innovate for social change. And going through that, I saw, I wanted to nerd out about science, but I also wanted to help people. And as I was trying to figure out how do I do so, I saw really unnecessary divides, right? I would go into one classroom and learn engineering, design, how to build really cool stuff, but with people who were so separate and divorced from the problems that they said that were important. Then I'd go into my development and sociology classes to think through the intricacies of these issues. But then we were missing the skills. And so when I went into the workforce, I saw the output of those divides, right? Technologists weren't trained in the ethics of the problems they wanted to tackle. And advocates were pushed away from these technical skills. And so that's what brought me here in Solve. I started a group called Trouble & Co. We push youth to think through data design and tech to solve different challenges. And so I was actually on the stage last year as a solver. So it's kind of surreal to be here today. And so super grateful for Solve. I put in an application, I almost didn't. So really glad I did. And they believed in my mission and the ways that we're using data to unearth local community stories through student voice.
And can you talk about the Mapping Justice project?
Of course. And so through Trouble & Co, we're really thinking about how do we bridge these worlds of STEM, civics, and student voice. Through Mapping Justice, students are getting a crash course in GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, a great way to visualize data, tell stories, both quantitative and qualitative. Diving into thick data, if I were going into that.
Yes.
But so in thinking about this program, it's 3 different parts. One, they're learning technical skills. You have to learn how to build. We're thinking about how to dive into data and research and ask really hard questions. But then we dive into the missing curriculum within computing. We're thinking about responsible tech, ethical AI, what should and shouldn't the robots do with our private data, engaging in these conversations that are really critical to make those technologists think about that. And then they innovate. They think through our own big ideas, our own wicked problems, and figure out how might my exploration in these issues that are so tied to me, things that I see or experience, how does that become my compass throughout STEM and guide my work in data science? And so students are exploring all of these issues that they care about as they're learning these technical skills for the future.
I love the image of a map, mapping justice, and you use the word compass, and that's your company, right, Trisha, is around compass.
Set and compass.
Set and compass, and part of what I want to dive into, we have 5 more minutes left, and I think what would be really great is to hear how to make these stories compelling. So how do you do that, Trisha, with the data?
Well, look, a lot of the work I do is often invisible. It's with decision makers, people making, really trying to affect infrastructural change. So it's not very public. It's often invisible work. And what's really hard is, when you're that up high in an organization, and if you're a founder, you're going to find out very quickly, especially newbie founders, is that very quickly you become farther and farther removed from your people, your customers, your patients, because the more and more you're focusing on scaling and building out the product and getting more funding, you have to hire more people to go do the actual work. And so if you see that in a large company, the people who are often most closest to the problems are the people who often are paid less. They have, more junior titles, and the people who know the least about the people are actually very up high. And so there's a total disconnect in how information flows. And, the work I do to try and get companies to bridge that is to really coach decision makers to say, you cannot think that the quantitative data is more useful. And so really it's training companies, and this is the reaction I get oftentimes. People are like, no, I don't want to go talk to people people. But you have to go talk to people, okay?
At all costs.
Yes, at all costs. And the companies that are always in touch and stay, and it doesn't matter of what size, is that you will lose your compass, you will lose your sight, you will lose sight of your vision and your goal very quickly if you disconnect from people. And so you really have to have that as your center goal. And so that's why you need to always make sure that you're not led by technological solutionism, which is so easy, you know, in this world where we think having more data, having more technology will suddenly make your product work. For you to actually find the right product market fit, you have to be connected, and that means always having the human voice. And I actually think in the age of AI, the people who will have those skills will it'll be rare, and it'll be harder, and it'll be a unique skill to have in the labor market.
Thank you. Thank you. That was, you've moved us. So music moves us as well. Can you talk about, especially globally, Sister Fa, from Germany to Senegal, how do you engage people?
Yes, I think for me it was not easy at all because I was supposed to tell my story first. And like with the guitar, it was a kind of like automatization. I was remembering all details from my own female genital cutting, but I was believing that through hip-hop is like a music of revendication, that I can definitely use that kind of music to really talk to the young people without hurting their sensibility and try to let them know that what I'm talking is for you, it's not really for me. But the problem is like female genital cutting was very complicated to tackle in my community without using music, because culturally in the Jola community and also in the Mandinka community, music is through everything. When someone is born, it's about music. When you passed away, it's about music. In your marriage, it's also about singing and also music. Then I tried to talk with those women who's like FGM performing, and I just found out that it have also with power have also with power to do. And then it's like women who's like leaders, they have something to say. I say to myself, okay, you know what? Through those music they are using, I will tell them that maybe we can try to find something alternative rite, that we're gonna stop FGM, and then we're gonna use music, we're gonna use something very specific and something very symbolic at the place of the FGM. And after 20 years for the initiation ceremony, all girls, even those one born in the US, can participate in the initiation ceremonies because there is no pain. And they say, okay, do you know about this? I say, yes. Then they say in French, "A beau menteur vient de loin." It's like when you don't say something clear, you have to bring your witness very far away. Then I invite women from Mali, and then we have some session in Dakar, and then we went to the villages, and they share with the ladies like, yes, we can create something symbolic, and then stop FGM, and continue with the initiation with a lot of songs and things like this, and it's really working now.
Wow, are there any unexpected stakeholders or people that have responded to your music in addition to the women you've engaged?
Yes, I work with the canton of Geneva. It's like the city of Geneva in Switzerland. I work also with IA Manège Suisse and the La Chaîne du Bonheur. They are the one who's like funding the project. We are in 21 villages in the south of Senegal, between Senegal, Gambia, and Guinea. And yes, I'm going again until 2026. I was telling my colleague in the room, like, I'm really struggling to finish my album since 3 years. I'm like in a labyrinth with this project of child protection. Maybe I need my self-help. just really to focus also a little bit on my music. But yes, we have support. We are really working, and the communities are answering. We are not talking for them. We are training them and giving them the power to do the work themselves.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the empowerment. And we have just a little bit of time for our last question. So I'd love to bring it back to our solver. What parting message might you have, having been now 1 year out, for how we can bring stories in a compelling way, the way our other panelists have?
Absolutely. So I think a lot about the ways that we cede power, the ways that we ask questions, the ways that we welcome dissent, causing good trouble. And I think about our youth and the ways that in our programs we get to really just get them to ask about what's going on in their community. I think about some of our programs that happen in Florida where they recognize, hey, like I feel like my family's being displaced due to climate change, and this concept of climate gentrification is happening. And how might data science be a way that affirms that real lived experience but helps them map what could be possible? Or I work in Hawaii where together, thinking through this disaster just happened in Lahaina. What is happening there? How is that actually inviting disaster capitalism to engage in this work? And so we're asking questions and we're giving voice to students to really emphasize that. And then the last point I want to mention, I was talking with the Solver earlier today, and we're talking about, the woes of starting up a new organization and some of the challenges. And he joked saying maybe we should call it Mistake Labs because, we have a lot of lessons and you learn as a startup what to do and what not to do. And we were joking, but in a way that kind of invited this opportunity to fail fast and to dive into this work. And so as we're seeding power and I think about the ways that we're providing a voice for students, I want to let them fail. I want to let them make mistakes, but in ways that are incredibly impactful and reflective. And so in what ways are we actually seeding power for youth to dictate their own future and reshape their own communities? And what role can we provide in providing education, resources, opportunities, a voice to actually do that work? And so welcome here at Mistake Labs, and I'm really excited to cause some good trouble.
Mistake Labs, well, a lot to be learned from creativity and this kind of ability to turn setbacks into beautiful things. So thank you so much to our panelists, Sister Fa, Nick, and Trisha. Thank you all.
Thank you.